Hey folks, Garrett Monroe here for Design Thinking. In this short video, I'm going to talk about taking your product from designing your prototype and then taking it into customer co-creation and even to what we're calling a learning launch. That is getting a pilot run or having some component of your product concept actually tested in the real world. You're doing some version of this for this course, and what I want to do is illustrate some of the important parts of this, how to do it, how to test particular assumptions by way of explaining a bit, as I've been doing throughout the course, through my product, the Sauna Rocket. And so here we are on this slideshow that's posted to Module 7. And we've been talking about 2D, 3D, and so-called 4D prototype testing. And I want to talk a bit about the 100-unit pilot run that we did with Sauna Rocket. So at this point, we had already taken the concept from individual prototypes I built in my house and then had it in front of a couple people, had a couple people try it out, was soliciting feedback from folks. And I got to a point where I wanted to actually just have 100 made and have them put online and see what the demand was. This was my key sort of issue I was trying to test. And also, if how people responded to the actual product, how much was needed. Did I need to do more than what was already there? And so we had 100 made, and that's a whole different story about taking the product to production. But essentially, we were able to, or I was able to get it on Amazon and have it listed, have the photos taken, and have 100 sold. And they sold in 15 days. So that really tested that initial consumption, actually way exceeded my demand expectations. So I thought maybe I would sell 10 or 20 a month, and I'd say I'd be happy with that. But they sold it out in 15 days, which I thought was just crazy. So at that point, for me, that was, at that time, I thought that was the most important issue was there a demand for what the concept was, which was a new full body home modular steam sauna. So that was a big success there. And it was just totally in the data. However, there were some really important insights that emerged for product design, issues and insights that emerged from that pilot run. So there's 3 here I want to go over. One was it really tested out all aspects of the component, in particular the shipping boxes. So I'm going to go into some details about how the shipping boxes I put together ended up being a real problem and almost tanked the project. And so so we went back and redesigned the shipping boxes. And that didn't come through until a little bit later in the production of those 100 units. That feedback took a while to come back. So by the time the 100 sold, you understand there's a lag time before the actual people get the product. Many people don't use it the first day or two, so it took them some time to actually put the product together. And people who had issues, not everybody who has issues with the product on Amazon actually makes a complaint or leaves a comment. So sometimes they just return it or refund it. So it actually took several weeks for all that feedback to come back to me from the pilot run. I didn't have any direct way of getting in contact with these people because I went through Amazon. I had to just listen through what they were doing through Amazon. So there's other ways, of course, of doing a pilot run, but I wanted to have it really, truly tested on that marketplace. So the instructions also needed work. People were confused by the instructions. And the LED light, which I initially packaged with the product, people liked it, but it wasn't that well integrated. Ultimately, some people made comments like they didn't think it was needed or it didn't fit well. And so that ultimately led to me removing the egg light and just building a sunroof. So let me show you some photos of this. So this is a photo of the first Amazon listing of the product. Here you can see this waterproof LED egg light we shipped with it. And my thought was, it's dark in there. People want to, not only is it dark inside the cabin, but maybe they want a mood light. So when looking at steam rooms and some saunas, they have a blue or a red or different colored lights you can have to kind of set the mood. And so by calling it a mood light, it filled a couple different functions here. One, it brought light into the sauna cabin. And 2, it felt more like a spa feel. And so that was the idea of the mood light. However, these cost some money. It was a whole third factory I had to be working with that was in a different part of China. So this is a pretty expensive part of the initial sauna bundle. And again, I ended up removing that and we ended up just installing another one of these clear plastic windows on the top of the sauna, which let the natural light come in through the room. And so that was a huge saver in terms of cost for the product that nobody seemed to care about. Just wasn't enough of a feature that anybody really cared about. People seem to just really want the full body sauna. And you know, from when I initially sold these, they were much cheaper. They were $180, $190. And I ended up actually continue to raise the price on it, and people just don't seem to care. So the light just seemed like wasn't needed, and that was an insight I got from some initial comments in the initial pilot run. Saved a bunch of money. So the shipping box container, and this actually led Amazon to initially shut down my listing. And it took about a month after they all sold out for Amazon to say, hey, there's a bunch of issues being reported about your product. You need to fix this before we can continue selling your product. And so at that time, I'd already ordered 100 or 300 more of these units. And so it was hard to make production changes at that point. I was moving way too fast, actually, in hindsight. And what I should have done was waited a bit more for that feedback to come back to me. So not great design thinking there, getting a little too excited about the product. But what we ended up finding was that the initial box, you can see photos over here, was way larger than it needed to be. So this was the first box we had designed. And this is the second box we had designed. It's like 10 inches shorter. And indeed, we've actually made it even smaller than this now. So it's even 2 inches shorter than this and a bit more narrow. Of course, a tighter box is less materials, less shipping cost, and ultimately it keeps the package more sitting better packaged. So the reason this box was poorly designed was because I used a firm in Ravenna, Ohio, which was packaging the product after it had already been unboxed from China and then reboxed. So it wasn't in that initial factory compressed state. But out of China, the product's much more compressed, having just come off the factory line. And so it can be in a really tight box. But once they were boxing it in China with these very large boxes designed in the US, the product was rattling around quite a bit. This caused the steamer to be damaged. And so a lot of steamers, about 15, 20% of the steamers arrived with loose screws. They were broken. And so initially, that was a major problem. So I thought it was the box at first, and I think the box did contribute to it. The smaller boxes really saved in shipping costs, less materials and so forth. Later on, after another production run, another pilot run, we found actually this initial steamer had major quality production problems. And so there were still loose screws after that box issue was fixed. And so while I was saving money on shipping and the boxes were better, it was less movement, there were still some issues with steamers, less, but still, I think it was 8-10% at that point. So we ended up actually going to factories and finding a different factory which was doing a better job producing the steamer. So this is all just to say, moving back to the slides, that having a pilot run can be a really great way of testing your assumptions. If you've, making a kind of strategic gamble on an idea that you've already begun to refine through data you've collected through your secondary research, and then by getting it in front of some early customers or getting initial feedback from your internal team. Doing a pilot run is really going to take it to scale, and you're going to get new insights that you couldn't have possibly foreseen. I'd also say it's a way of really for kind of getting rid of this perfectionist mindset and being hung up on feeling like something can't be done, you don't have the skills or resources, or it needs to be perfect before it gets there. It doesn't really. If you've got a working prototype, it's really a trial by fire, a trial in the market to see if there's a demand for it and if it works. And if there's enough of it, you're going to be able to sort it out. And so while I wasn't a box designer, I wasn't a factory quality engineer, I wasn't somebody who had designed a product before, by actually doing a 100 product run, pilot run, which was a little bit of a bold move, it kind of pushed me into a place that allowed the product to be produced and surfaced issues and presented them in a way that allowed me to actually fix them and approach them, find people who could approach them. So the pilot run is a really important way, or a really powerful way of doing what we call a learning launch in design thinking. And you can certainly apply this to our design challenge this year. Okay, so much for storytelling. I'll see you in the live discussion. Thank you.